right, we are live. The Let It Begin With Me workshop.
Yeah. I woke up this morning with my mind. That's a good thing, wake up with your mind. Oh, this hate on freedom. Oh, I woke up this morning with my mind. The state on freedom. Let me say I woke up this morning. Oh, hallelujah, hallelujah, oh, hallelujah, hallelujah. I'm walking
Foster, probably the best singer that you've never heard of. My name is Bill, and I'm an active member of Al-Anon. Welcome to Let It Begin With Me, an Al-Anon step workshop. I get this to come up. And our host, Pat, I think wanted to say just a couple of words.
I just wanted to welcome you all to the historic Crystal Bay Hotel. This is National Registered Historic Restoration building that reopened again in 2015. It was originally built in 1915 and hosted, such celebrities like Marilyn Monroe, Babe Ruth, Robert Kennedy, Glenn Miller, Al Capone, those kind of people back in the day. And it was a long-term stay place in the beginning, and it's been completely redone, and we'd like to ask you to make yourself at home. If there's anything that at all that we can get for you, there's coffee and tea and decaf right over there. Please feel free to use the cups or the to-go cups. There's sugar and sweeteners and half and half and milk and stuff in that little refrigerator right there. And then there's some food that's been brought. Feel free to use our silverware, napkins, and plates and everything. It would just make yourself at home. There's 2 bathrooms down this little hallway to the right. There's another separate little hallway. There's 2 bathrooms there. And then if you go past the front desk and head down that hallway, there's a bathroom on each side. So there's 4 of them there and easy access for you here. But we'd like to, again, just welcome you and make yourself feel at home. And if there's anything that we can get you, please let us know.
Okay, thank
Thanks,
you, Ben.
Ben.
Okay, the reason I play that Ruthie Foster song at the beginning, Stay on Freedom, is if you woke up this morning and you were not obsessing about someone else, you're free. If you were obsessing about someone else, we're going to show you how to get free, and then we're going to spend the next 4 hours showing you how to stay free. They say when an Al-Anon dies, someone else's life passes before their eyes. So you can laugh, okay? You can laugh. All right. And okay, this is what we're going to be doing today. We're going to have 2 sessions, each lasting about an hour and a half. Please wait until the breaks to smoke or use the restroom if you can, because it's a little distracting to other people that are here. Please turn off your cell phone. We're going to be using only Al-Anon conference-approved literature, Paths to Recovery, and how Al-Anon works. Al-Anon has no prescribed way of taking the steps. I don't know if you do that or not. There's hundreds of ways to take the steps. We're going to show you one way today to take the steps as described in our literature. Okay, and I want to point out a couple of disclaimers. We do not speak for the Al-Anon family groups, and this workshop has been the effort of many people over a very long period of time. We're grateful to be your leaders today. We're not here to tell you that you're doing anything wrong. Our hope is you can find something here today to help you in your recovery and your 12-step work. Please feel free to take and use anything that you might find helpful, and we'll show you how all of this is available to you online so you can download it. And then, Iris, do you want to talk about what you're doing?
So, if you're on Facebook, go to there's a Let It Begin With Me workshop page. You can go to it, www.facebook.com/LIBWM. There is an event in there. If you go to the event section, you can check in, say that you're here right now doing it. We're also on Facebook Live, so there's video going on, so people all over the world are able to watch and participate. So that's what we're doing back here. So like our page, we'll update you on any other workshops we've got going on, and you can watch this video anytime after.
More important, you can use it to work with people, and there will be no faces on the video, none. It's going to be completely anonymous. Unless you decide that's right. Okay, so thank you, Iris. And every Al-Anon group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions, so we're going to pass the basket. And while we're doing that, I think this is the first time most of you have been to this workshop. I don't see too many faces that I recognize. So how many of you are new in Al-Anon within the last year? Okay, that's a lot of you. All right, so, and if you aren't an Al-Anon member, you're welcome to take the steps along with us. They're the same steps as every other 12-step program, the only difference being in the first step. I think all of you know an alcoholic, so that qualifies you for Al-Anon. If you don't know an alcoholic, some of us have extra ones we'd be happy to loan you, for the purposes of doing this workshop today. Okay? So, there's a few things you need to learn if you're new to Al-Anon. So would everybody please stand? Okay, and the first thing that you need to learn is the Al-Anon handshake. It's like this. Everybody got it? And then the Al-Anon salute. Okay, and many of you may or may not know there's an Al-Anon wine that a lot of people serve. It's, where have you been? So while you're standing, I want to welcome you. Excuse me, you go ahead and sit down. The next part of it says, look, you need to keep an open mind. There's no other way. We are taught that the 3 essentials of recovery in every program are honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. So in order to prepare us to do this, we're going to take just a moment of silence and pray for honesty, open-mindedness, and willingness. So we'll do that now. Okay, good. And while we're kind of quiet, I want everybody to just take a moment and kind of check in as to how you're feeling right now. And there's a reason for that, and I'll explain that later. Okay. So welcome to Let It Begin With Me, an Al-Anon step study. My name is Bill. I'm an active member of Al-Anon.
I'm Johanna, an active member of Al-Anon.
Okay, and for all of you here and for those of you that may be joining us online, I want to welcome you to the, ladies and gentlemen, men and women, sponsors and sponsees. Welcome to the Crystal Bay Hotel in St. Petersburg, Florida, sunny St. Petersburg, Florida. It's 75 degrees here. Some of you are elsewhere. Yeah, the serenity capital of the world. We're going to start with another piece of music. Tell me if any of you felt this way when you first came to Al-Anon. Anybody here feel that way when you first came to Al-Anon? You maybe feeling that way today? Okay, don't have to have a show of hands. It's all right. So, we're going to start with how Al-Anon works, page 44, paragraph 1, line 6 to 11. Johanna's going to read that.
Al-Anon's 12 steps show us the way. Through the steps, we can fill that empty place within us where loneliness and pain reside. We come alive in a way we never experienced before. We realize that we belong and that we are loved. The following is a brief overview of this remarkable path of spiritual development and personal growth.
Okay, so we're going to start with a moment of silence, followed by the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So let's just get started right away with step 1, which says,
We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable.
okay, from paths to recovery.
Many of us come to Al-Anon filled with despair and hopelessness. Some of us come to find out how to get another person sober. Others grew up in alcoholic homes or left alcoholic partners and no longer live with active drinking. Though we may not have labeled it this way, we come to Al-Anon because our lives are unmanageable. We come looking for relief.
Okay, and I think that's the reason all of us come to our first meeting. And whatever is going on, very simply, we're looking for relief. Something has to change. Something has to become different.
Once we acknowledge that someone else's drinking has affected our lives, we may want to blame everything on the drinking. We are sure there must be something more we can say or do that will convince the alcoholic to stop drinking, thus resolving our problems. We have no idea that we are as powerless over alcohol as the alcoholic is.
And this is the Al-Anon illusion, that there's one more thing that I can say, one more thing that I can do that'll get them to stop drinking or to stop using. There's got to be one more thing, just one more thing. If I read one more book, I go to one more workshop, I go to one more counselor, there'll be something that I can do that'll make them stop drinking. Okay, I'm going to give you the 5 most powerful words you can say to an alcoholic. You might want to write them down. It's important. Will the defendant please stand? And that will not get most of them sober. And if that won't get them sober, why would I think that I can come up with something more powerful than that to get them sober? Okay, does that make sense to everyone?
Admitting our powerlessness may be very difficult for us. After all, we are the competent ones who held the family, the job, or the world together while the alcoholics in our lives created chaos. How can it be that we, the responsible ones, are powerless? In Al-Anon, we come to understand that our lives may be unmanageable because we are trying to control the people and situations in our lives. It can be hard to conceive that our well-meaning efforts have been part of the problem, but by the time we reach Al-Anon, we are finally ready to try something, anything new.
Yeah, it's like you go to the circus and there's a guy with all the plates spinning. Isn't that how it feels? You know, when we're in the middle of an alcoholic situation, before we find a solution, got all these plates and just got to keep them spinning and spinning without dropping anything.
In order to take the first step and admit our powerlessness over alcoholism, we need first to understand and accept that alcoholism is a disease. One symptom is an uncontrollable desire to drink. As long as an alcoholic continues to drink, that desire will increase. The only way to arrest the disease is total abstinence.
And that includes abstinence from all other mood and mind-altering drugs.
Our experience shows that we cannot force someone to stop drinking. This is an individual choice of the alcoholic. Alcoholism not only exists inside the body of the alcoholic, but it is a disease of relationships as well. Many of the symptoms of alcoholism are in the behavior of the alcoholic. The people who are involved with the alcoholic react to this behavior. They try to control it, make up for it, or hide it. They often blame themselves for it and are hurt by it. Eventually, they become emotionally disturbed themselves.
Which sounds like a pretty strong statement to say that I came here and I was emotionally disturbed. But if I look at some of the things that I was doing, what other explanation is there other than I was emotionally disturbed? Okay, I want to go back and talk about this as a disease of relationships. I have a sponsee who's in an addiction studies program at Texas Tech. And a lot of the people in that program are recovering alcoholics and addicts. And one of the things they can do now is they can wire your brain up and they can see the neurotransmitters and the pathways and all that. So they wire up one of the guys in the program who's a crackhead and they show him some crack. and certain paths of his brain light up, just by looking at the picture. Then they took his wife, wired her up, showed her a picture of him, the same areas of her brain lit up. Okay, so this is really what we're dealing with. Now, whether or not it was that way before, who cares? The point is that we become hardwired, and that's why it is so difficult, for us to break the patterns and the habits that bring us here. Does that make sense to everybody? Because we've all heard this. People say, well, why don't you just leave them? Why don't you just do this? Or why don't you just do that? And even though we may want to and we try, we just can't seem to bring ourselves to do it. Many of us. So we become hardwired. This is why we need a program of recovery.
In Al-Anon meetings, we hear the 3 C's describing our powerlessness over alcoholism. We didn't cause it, we can't cure it, and we can't control it.
That's what I'm powerless over in the first step here.
With this first step, we admit that we did not cause, cannot control, and cannot cure the alcoholic, the disease of alcoholism, or the fact that we've been affected by this disease. We are powerless over alcohol and its effects on us. By ourselves, we can do nothing to overcome the effects of this disease. In fact, our attempts to exert power over alcohol have made our lives unmanageable.
Okay. And this is a significant difference between what we do here in Al-Anon and the other 12-step programs and everything else that's out there, is this admission of powerlessness. Virtually every other treatment modality I've ever seen attempts to empower people. And this idea of empowerment is a wonderful thing if you're trying to go back to school or get a job or put together a career or any of 1,000 other things. The only problem is it doesn't work with alcoholism because we're powerless. And that's the difference here, is that simple admission that I am powerless. Basically, the first step is I am screwed. I have this dilemma, I have this problem, and there's absolutely nothing in and of myself that I can do about it. And worse than that, as it says in the last sentence, my attempts to exert power have made my life more unmanageable because I keep doing things that complicate my life, and just kind of bring me into this downward spiral that seems to get faster and faster and faster. Anybody relate to that? Am I in the right place?
Yeah. We have to admit that nothing we do or don't do can control another person's drinking.
Nothing we do or don't do can control another person's drinking. Okay? You're going to hear enabling talked about a lot in Al-Anon meetings. And when you read the Al-Anon literature, the definition of enabling in the Al-Anon literature is very different than the way most people talk about it. In other words, there's nothing I can do to control another person's drinking. Based on the current definition of enabling from most of the treatment centers and Dr. Phil, okay, you can't have it both ways. Either you're powerless or you can enable. Take your pick. It's one or the other. Does that make sense to everybody? You can't be powerless and enable. And what we're saying here is we are powerless. And if you look at enabling in the Al-Anon literature, there's a very different definition. Okay. Nothing I do can control another person's drinking. Nothing. So this is the first step question. For those of you that are ready to take the first step, please stand. We're going to do this one by one. The idea is to kind of smash the delusion that we can do something about someone else's drinking. And the question is, do you admit you're powerless over alcohol, the alcoholic, or alcoholism in your life has become unmanageable? Simple yes or no. Johanna?
Yes.
Yes.
One at a time.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Over here. The back row. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
That's good. Yes. Did I miss anybody? Congratulations, you just took the first step. Give yourselves a hand. Look, this is all that is necessary. If you want to read more or write more or do something additional, you can, but this is all that is required in order to take the first step, is that simple admission. And here's what happens as a result of taking the first step.
By letting go of the illusion of control over other people, their actions, and their addictions to alcohol, we find an enormous burden is lifted and we begin to discover the freedom and the power we do possess, the power to define and live our own lives.
See, all I've really let go of is an illusion anyway. You know, it makes it a lot simpler when I understand it was an illusion. It didn't exist. It's something I just created. Make sense to everybody? So the first step, I'm just giving away the illusion that somehow I can fix this situation.
Step 1 reminds us of our proper relationship with others. We are powerless over them. It places us in correct relationship with ourselves. When we try to control others, we lose the ability to manage our own lives. Step 1 is the true beginning of our path to recovery.
Which brings us to step 2, which says,
Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Al-Anon is not a religious program, but it is a spiritual one. Our 12 steps speak of a power greater than ourselves and a God of our understanding. We may choose any higher power or concept of God we wish.
or lack of a concept. Doesn't make any difference. Al-Anon works for people who believe in God. Al-Anon works for people who don't believe in God. Al-Anon does not work for people who believe they're God.
Traditional or contemporary, deity or force of nature, the choice is ours. Our God is personal, adaptable to our changing beliefs and growing spirituality. The key is in our newfound willingness to surrender our lives to our God. In step 1, we learned that we didn't cause the disease of alcoholism. We couldn't control it or cure it. Step 2 offers us an option, sanity.
Yeah, remember the spinning plates? I think I'm just going to let them go.
One definition of insanity is performing the same action again and again, each time expecting to achieve a different result. Any of us who had been affected by the family disease of alcoholism have experienced this and other forms of insanity. The alcoholic cannot heal our wounds, neither can our willpower, quick-wittedness, or perseverance. Turning to these sources again and again is no more useful or sane than going to a car lot to buy groceries. Having continually failed to resolve our difficulties ourselves, most of us finally realize we must look for help in a more promising place. What we seek is something greater, beyond our own abilities, a source of help, comfort, guidance, and strength unrestricted by human limitations.
Albert Einstein said we can't solve problems by using the same kind of thinking we used when we created them. In other words, the mind that created the problem cannot solve the problem. And if my problem is my thinking, I can't solve my thinking problem with my thinking, even though my thinking tells me I can. You see the conundrum? See the problem?
In time, we come to believe that only a power greater than ourselves has the power to restore us to sanity. To take step 2, you don't have to believe that this will happen, only that it could. Step 2 is about possibility, and that is why it is about hope.
You don't have to believe that any of this will work. Just maybe that it might. Maybe it might work.
In the process of taking step 2, we open our hearts and minds to the possibility that such a power could actually exist in our lives.
You know, when I first came into recovery, there's an old Amishman who always used to say, I don't understand electricity, but I'm not going to sit in the dark until I figure it out. I'm going to go flip the switch. And that's what we're going to do today, is we're going to flip the switch. Simply flip the switch. So for those who are ready to take the second step, please stand. This is the second step question. You know, do you believe, or are you even willing to believe that there's a power greater than yourself that can, that can restore you to sanity? Now, if anybody's having difficulty with that concept, I don't know about you, but I found, the police were a power greater than me. The IRS was a power greater than me. My ex-wife's attorneys were power greater than me. Okay, so all I'm going to do is make the assumption that there's some power that may be greater than me that can help me. So it's a yes or no question again. Johanna?
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, yes, yes.
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 Oh, come on. Yes or no? Take a lead. Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Irish? Justin? Yes, congratulations. You just took step 2. I know, it sounds much too simple, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The 12-step programs will be designed to be taken in a matter of a few days. The woman back is my daughter, Iris. She started Alateen at 7. She's become a black belt Al-Anon. But she used to tell the Alateens, what you tell them, Iris?
The steps are written for alcoholics. How hard can it be?
How hard could it be? And this was designed originally to be an oral program, to be done quickly, because when we get here, we need relief. And if we don't get relief, we probably aren't going to stay. Which brings us to step 3.
Made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. In step 1, we learned that many of our problems may have resulted from our ineffective efforts to manage our own lives. In step 2, we came to believe that a higher power could help restore us to sanity. It naturally follows that the next step would be to turn to that power for help. Some members shorten the first 3 steps to, I can't, God can, I'll let Him. Obviously, if our past efforts have been futile, and if we believe that a power can help us, it makes sense to allow that power to do so. Deciding to turn to a power greater than ourselves for help may seem like a tremendous gamble, but really, what do we have to lose? We know that our old self-reliance and determination have let us down again and again. It only makes sense to try another way. So we choose differently. We make a decision, a commitment to take all our concerns and feelings, worries, fears, resentments, loves, dreams, wishes, thoughts, choices, and relationships, in short, our will and our lives, and place them in the care of the God of our understanding. We don't have to figure anything out, know what the results will be, or even feel comfortable letting go of our efforts to control. All we need to do is make a decision. By making such a commitment, we stop setting ourselves up for the failure we have known in the past when we've tried to manipulate people and events that were beyond our control. Instead, we make the decision to turn it over.
Ann Smith was the wife of Dr. Bob Smith, who was a co-founder of AA, and she kept diaries. And one of the things that came up in her diary over and over and over again, and these are available to read, they're in the public domain. And she said, we turn as much of ourselves as we can over to as much of God as we understand. That's all that's necessary. I turn as much of myself as I can over to as much of God as I understand, which means I can do it right now with what I have. I don't need any more. I don't have to wait. I don't have to do any more research. I turn as much of myself as I can over to as much of God as I understand.
What decision are we making? We are asked to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. Few of us are able to immediately turn over everything in our lives. Making the decision to do so is merely a commitment to try. To illustrate this aspect of step 3, a member posed the following. 3 frogs sat on the lily pad. One made a decision to jump off. How many frogs are left? The answer is 3. The frog merely made the decision to jump. He hasn't jumped yet.
And I kept looking for another way to expand upon this, and I was given this piece of music a little while ago. This is the 3rd step decision.
Love is my decision. It's up to me to give of my heart. Love is my decision. No one else can tell me to start. And once I decide to change my mind, God will show me how. Love is my decision, right here and now. Love is my decision. It's up to me to stand on that bridge. Love is my decision. No one else can make me forgive. And once I decide to change my mind, God will show me how. Love
So if you're ready to make that decision, Al-Anon has a third step prayer. It's actually in this little book called As We Understood. So if you're ready to make that decision, we'll just do it together. Dear God, I am powerless and my life is unmanageable without your help and guidance. I come to you today because I believe that you can restore and renew me to meet my needs today. Since I cannot manage my life or affairs, I have decided to give them to you. I put my life, my will, my thoughts, my desires, and ambitions in your hand. Congratulations, you just took the third step. Give yourself a hand. This is what happens as a result of taking the first 3 steps.
Whether we have a well-defined relationship with God or a vague sense of some intangible force, choosing to turn our will and our lives over to God's care doesn't automatically make all our problems disappear. We have simply made a decision. But by doing so, we've opened a door for help and stepped out of the way. Step 1, 2, and 3 complete our preparation to begin taking action in our recovery with the steps that follow.
So in other words, there's more to do. The third step decision will have very little lasting effect unless we go further. And for the life of me, I cannot understand why anyone would come to a 12-step program and not work the 12 steps. It's kind of like going to a bakery to window shop. You're really missing out on the best part of the entire experience, which brings us to step 4. Come on. Oh, wait a minute. Before that, here we go. I forgot we had
I'm on my knees, from mentally to happiness. I'm on my way, from misery to happiness.
We're on our way. Brings us to step 4, which says,
Made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Until we take our inventory, we don't know which character defects blocked us from recovery. Just do it, we are repeatedly advised. We don't need to do it perfectly. There will be time to do it again. And again, and again. If we don't make a start, nothing about us will ever change. When we courageously and carefully examine where we are, the door to change is open. Al-Anon members worldwide have experienced the power this step offers. By using the collective experiences of these members, we learn there is no one way to take a 4th step inventory. We are repeatedly told that the single key to this step is to take action by doing it. What form do we use for step 4? Any form. Will we do it perfectly the first time? Probably not. It doesn't matter. What does matter is that by completing a 1st, 2nd, and 3rd inventory, members learn new facts about themselves. Some compare working a 4th step to that of peeling the layers of an onion, one layer at a time until the core is reached. It matters not how we do it. What matters is that we do it. An Al-Anon sponsor shares that, in working with young people, the easiest way to work this step is to keep it simple. A 4th step meeting for this group involves taking one sheet of paper and folding it in half. On one half, the sponsor suggests that members list assets, all the things they know about themselves. On the other half, the sponsor suggests that they list their character defects. She suggests that each list should be equal in length. As teams begin the simple 4th step, they are encouraged to talk with their personal or group sponsor when they get stuck. The Al-Anon sponsor stated that, in this loving environment, this approach towards working step 4 is simple and for the young people approach. She added that it works for adults in Al-Anon too.
okay, so that's what we're going to do. Want to take these things out? Okay. Now, in order to do this, you're going to need a pen or a pencil. Is there anyone here that does not have a pen or a pencil? Raise your hand. Oh my God. This is how I can tell the alcoholics from the Al-Anons. Okay. Get some pens. All right. who else needs a pen? Raise your hand. Who else needs a pen? Anybody else need a pen?
Everyone get one of these and the charts? There's more up here.
Okay, everyone should have 2 sheets. The first one is a grid, like it's on the screen. Is there anybody that does not have a grid? Okay, the other sheet is written on both sides. On one side it has guidelines, on the other side it has a definition of terms. Everybody have one of those? Okay, now before we start, I want everybody to just reach up as high as you can. Come on, everybody. Okay, now reach a little higher. If you had followed the first direction, you might be able to follow the second one. So, the point is we are actually going to follow the directions. Now, on the grid, what you have on one side are the negative or defects. On the other side, you have the positive or assets. Across the top, we put the people, principles, and institutions that we need to inventory. Today, we are going to do only people because it's simpler. Just people. And we are not going to put ourselves on the inventory, again, because it's simpler not to. So we're going to keep this very simple today just to give everybody a start. Okay? So, we're going to go to the sheet with the guidelines. Everybody want to go there? And Johanna's going to read that.
Guidelines for the 4th step inventory and 5th step sharing. Objective: the purpose of this admission is to come clean before God, to allow ourselves to be exactly who we are within this vitally important spiritual relationship. The moral inventory consists of a list of character defects that separate us from God and a list of character assets that bring us closer to God. We use the moral inventory to set down in writing the people, institutions, and principles that keep separated from our higher power. First, examine the moral inventory and read the explanation of terms for the 4th step negative defects and positive assets inventory checklist. Make sure you understand the meaning of each subject.
Okay, so turn the page over, okay, to the definition of terms, and we're going to start with anger.
Anger, a violent, vengeful passion or emotion excited by a real or supposed injury to oneself or others. Includes resentment, ill temper, sulking, brooding, a hostile or indignant attitude.
Scream.
Obsession, a depraved or unlawful craving.
Especially in Texas.
An eagerness to possess or enjoy. Excessive desire, lust after money or lust after things.
Okay, so in other words, obsession is really just a newer term for the word lust. And we can lust over everything, almost anything. It doesn't have to be a person. It can be money. It can be power. It can be a thing. Anything that we're obsessing over, we're lusting for. Fear.
Being afraid of losing something we have or not getting something we want. Includes phobia, terror, panic, anxiety, uneasiness, worry, paranoia, depression.
Now, when we talk about things like paranoia and depression, we do not mean that in the clinical sense. That's somewhat different.
Self-centered fear is at the root of our disease.
That's always what's at the root. If I am willing to inventory and go deep enough, that is always what I find at the bottom. I've never, ever found anything else.
Envy, discontent inspired by the sight of another's success or superiority. Includes jealousy, suspicion, doubting the faithfulness of a friend, wanting another's possessions or attributes. Dishonesty, taking something or not returning something that does not belong to us. Guilt is an indication of dishonesty.
If you feel guilty, you probably are. Guilt is for things that we have actually done. Shame, it feels much the same, but it's very different. Shame is an incorrect opinion about who we are and our place in the universe. It requires a spiritual solution. We're going to come to that in just a minute. But guilt is for things we've actually done. Shame is our opinion of who we think we are.
Includes lying or withholding the truth, taking advantage of another's misfortune or weakness, not contributing to a fair share, avoiding responsibility. Greed, desire to have more than one needs or one's fair share, includes selfishness, stealing, gluttony, wanting to go or going to excess. Laziness, not having the will or desire to take action, includes the avoidance of or slowness in completing a task, assignment, or obligation.
Like a fourth step.
Lacking the desire to work, putting forth less than a good effort. Pride, feeling better than or feeling less than someone else. Feelings of superiority include prejudice about race, education, religion, sarcasm, putting someone else down to feel better, egotism, self-centeredness, judging, arrogance, desire to be noticed or have one's way, belief one is always right. Extreme self-centeredness, ego, is the main activator of all other defects. Feelings of inferiority include self-pity, low self-esteem, lack of self-worth, lack of respect, belief one is always wrong, need for validation, need for approval, shame stems from pride.
Okay, so in other words, what's always at the root is fear, and fear triggers the ego, and then based on the ego, I do things that I probably shouldn't be doing. I want to go down to the bottom where it talks about need for validation and need for approval. These are almost the same, but not exactly. Generally speaking, forgive me, this is a broad brush, but generally speaking, the men tend to identify a little better with the need for approval. In other words, I want the corner office, I want the big car, I want my name on the door. The women tend to identify a little better usually with the need for validation. Do I look fat in this dress? The answer is always no, always. Okay? And shame stems from pride. In other words, it's an incorrect perception of who I am. Guilt is I did something wrong. Shame is I think I'm something wrong. This is a spiritual problem, requires a spiritual solution. We'll talk about this throughout the day as we go. Okay. Go ahead.
Start with the negative defect side of the sheet. Save the positive assets portion of the inventory until after you've discussed your list of defects with your sharing partner.
Okay, so everybody has a pen or a pencil, right? Okay, I want you to take this top left space, right there, see it? Okay, and write down a name, any name, not your own, just write it down, don't think about it. Write down the first name that comes to mind, write it down, don't think about it, just write down a name. Write down a name, any name, except your own, any name, write it down. Everybody got a name? Everybody written down a name? Okay, are you angry with this person? If so, put a dot right there below the name across from anger. Now, if you followed the first direction and wrote down the very first name that came to mind, I guarantee you are angry. It just always works that way. If you aren't sure if you're angry, look at that definition of terms. Do any of those things apply to you in your relationship with this person? If so, put a dot. Everybody got that? Any questions? Pretty straightforward, okay? Is there any obsession in your relationship with this person? If so, put a dot. Look at the definition of terms. Do any of those things apply to you in your relationship with this person? If so, put a dot under their name across from obsession. How about fear? Any fear in connection with this relationship? Are you afraid they'll leave? Are you afraid you're going to have to leave? Are you afraid they might come back? That's in the case of kids. Any fear? Afraid they won't get sober, afraid they won't get better. How about envy or jealousy? Any of those apply in your relationship with this person? Again, if you aren't sure, look at the definition of terms. If they do, put a dot. How about dishonesty? Now, this is about you, not them. I don't care if they're lying to you on a daily basis. Are you being dishonest with them? Again, look at the definition of terms. Do any of those apply to you in your relationship with this person? How about greed? Want more than your share? Take more than your share? Laziness. Are you keeping up your end of the relationship? Are you doing what you're supposed to be doing? If you're supposed to take care of the house, are you doing that? If you're working, are you showing up for work? Are you taking care of your end of the relationship? When was the last time you called Mom? If that's the name at the top. Yeah, you can. Go ahead.
All right. So one of the things that that I learned in the program is dishonesty is not necessarily hiding money, because you might be in your best self-interest to have your own bank account so that they don't spend it all.
However, put a dot, and we'll discuss it. Okay?
So self-preservation is different than...
Right, but you still need to put a dot. It's still dishonest. So you still need to put a dot. But what the dot is, and as you'll see, the dots really become talking points. These are the things I need to talk over with a sponsor and with somebody who's going to help me with this. Okay, how about pride? Feel better or less than? Have you ever referred to him as that son of a bitch? If so, that's pride. Put a dot. Okay, now everybody should have a sheet. Everybody should have a sheet with a name at the top left and one or more dots in the column beneath that. Everybody got that? Okay, now for purposes of illustration, I'm going to ask some people to share their inventory. Now, obviously, you don't have to share anything that's too personal that you just don't want to share, but to kind of help the group and to give everybody an idea of what we're doing here, I'm going to ask a couple people to share. So who would be willing to share their inventory? Okay, since you're right here. Okay, I don't care who it is.
Okay,
Are you angry?
yes.
What are you angry about?
They don't want me to drink.
Okay, what else are you angry about?
He's keeping my grandchild from me right now.
Okay, I think she's angry. I think she has something to be angry about. You ready? Okay, so take the dot and turn the dot to a check mark. We start with dots because it's a talking point. If it's real, then it becomes, once we discuss it, if it's real, then we turn it into a check mark, because that means we need to do something about it. Has everybody got that? That makes sense? Okay, I think that's real. Okay, how about obsession?
Yes,
What's your obsession about?
I do a lot of caretaking for him,
Okay, what are you obsessed about?
making sure that his life is okay.
Okay, put a check mark. Anybody here identify with that? Like everybody, if you're here? I hope, I think, right? Okay. How about fear?
Yes,
What are you afraid of?
I'm afraid that he won't be able to take care of himself.
That's a check mark. That's fear. How about envy or jealousy?
No,
Okay. How about dishonesty?
yes,
How are you being dishonest?
I'm not letting him know about my recovery.
Okay. That's dishonesty. Put a check mark. How about greed?
No,
Okay. By the way, have you noticed that if it's a no, we don't go digging for stuff? We don't need to go dig for anything. There'll be more than enough to work with without dredging. And if it's something that's important, it's going to come up again. And we do inventory over and over and over again. So it'll come up on the next inventory or the one after or on a 10th step. Okay, so we simply take the stuff that's obvious because that's the stuff we really need to work with, the stuff that comes to mind first. How about laziness?
yes,
How are you being lazy?
I've backed off from helping him because I get resentful.
Okay, that's laziness. Put a check mark. But you notice that's also tied to the anger? Some of these are going to overlap. That's okay. It's a place to start. How about pride? Feel better or less than?
Yes,
Okay, put a check mark. Okay, let's do another one. I need another
Quick
volunteer.
question. Resentment falls under anger, yeah?
Yes. Resentment is anger. Did you have your hand up? Okay. Don't care who it is. Are you angry?
Yeah.
What are you angry about?
Angry about verbal abuse.
Okay, put a check mark. I think that's real. Okay, how about obsession?
Yes.
What are you obsessed about?
Just about managing his life, making his life better.
Okay, you're obsessed about making his life better.
Right.
Okay, put a check mark. Welcome to Al-Anon. Any fear?
Yes.
Yeah, his life may not get better. Put a check mark. Did everybody get that? How about envy or jealousy?
Yes.
Okay, what's that about?
Just suspicion of cheating.
Okay, put a check mark. How about dishonesty?
No.
How about greed? How about laziness?
Yes.
What's that
Similar
about?
to her, I manage a lot of her stuff, but I've backed off.
Okay, that's his laziness. How about yours? This is about
I guess no.
That's a no. This is all about us. This is not about the other person. How about pride?
Yeah.
Okay, put a check mark. How about one of the guys?
I just want to
John?
ask a question. I heard that response that I'm lazy because I got resentful and I'm not doing something for them. Like, to me, it's like my experience, I was doing stuff for people that I shouldn't have been doing for them. When I stopped doing stuff for them and focusing on my
Right.
stuff, I was actually doing a lot of stuff.
Which we'll get to when we talk about what we need to do to make it better. Okay. Can we, you want to do yours?
I'll pass.
You pass? Morris?
Yeah, I got angry.
Okay, I don't care who it is. You angry? Be angry about it.
You better say that for 3 months, man. I wasn't know. Why you looking?
Okay, put a check mark. Everybody agree that he's angry? Yeah. Okay. Some of this stuff is literally that obvious, okay? Once we sit down and look at it, it's that obvious. How about obsession?
It's just an anger.
Okay, fear?
No.
Okay, nothing you're afraid of in this relationship?
Well, I was lost.
Okay. Some of you go together. Not always. Usually, if I'm angry, it usually goes bad because at the very least, I'm afraid of getting caught. Because all that kind of makes sense. Some of this is going to overlap. Okay. Dishonesty. Okay. Greed. Pardon? No, on your part.
No.
How about laziness?
Yeah, I'm being lazy.
How- You can handle-
As far as when they call me, I don't answer. Call back. You being lazy about it. See how long I can drag out.
Okay.
So the fact
I don't think that's lazy. I think that's anger.
you feel about anger.
Yeah, I just. Yeah. How about pride for better life? Okay.
Yeah.
Right. How about another volunteer? Let's do one more. Okay. I don't care who it is. You angry?
Yeah.
What are you angry about?
This person affect my life.
Okay. Would you mind being just a little more specific? That's okay. You don't have to. That's all right. Pardon?
I think it's tied in with the obsession part.
Okay.
The obsessing over she's one meetings because she's working her program and that.
All right. And they're angry because you're afraid that she isn't doing what you think she should be doing. Is that a fair description?
Yeah.
And you're obsessing over that.
Yeah.
Let's put a check mark under anger, put a check mark under obsession. Okay, and put a check mark under fear. Okay, how about envy or jealousy? How about dishonesty?
No.
Greed?
Yes.
Okay, what's that about?
I think that the selfishness aspect, like trying to control her life and what she's doing, I consider that greed on my part under greed is the selfishness.
Okay,
Is that valid?
yeah, that's valid. You want her to do what you want her to do so you'll feel better.
Yeah.
Okay, that's several things. Read just one of them. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, laziness?
No.
How about pride?
No.
You let her less than?
No.
She's not going to meetings. You let her less than?
Better than less than her?
Yeah.
No, I don't feel like I'm a better
Okay.
person. No.
Okay. That's fine. That's fine. It's just,
No, I'm mad, but I feel like I'm
okay,
better.
that's fine. Yeah, well, that's true. Are you judging her at all?
Oh, maybe with that being
Yeah,
said.
okay.
Sorry, we're judging.
Pride pretty much follows every other character defect, pretty much. If you have any of the other defects, there's almost always pride. Okay. Does everybody kind of have the idea? Everybody got the idea? Okay, so there's two ways to proceed from here. Some people at this point go on and do steps, 6 and 7, and then when they get to 8, they talk about the amends. I don't do that. I figure since I got you sitting here, we're already talking about this. We know a little bit about the case. Let's talk about the amends. Let's go back to your angry. Okay. What are you going to do about the anger? You should know.
I'm going to start working on, I'm going to let him change me.
Okay, which means you're going to what?
Go.
Okay. How do you do that? If you don't remember, I don't know. So, turn the top on the name for all of it. I want you to sign your image right there. Underneath their name, right for Thursday. It doesn't mean you ever help. And we're going to what you're doing very specific to do it, okay? Is the okay.
So focusing on myself.
Oh, how are you going to do that? Okay, good. That's fine. Okay. Let's first off, which one of the best that I can do. Yeah, how do I say? Where are you today? Right now. How good to an Al-Anon meeting? Right? That's a tool that's really pretty unique to the Al-Anon program. I find that in the other close-up programs. So that's how we get out of the session. But Al-Anon. Begin to work program. How about that?
Here in Arizona, Chicago.
Okay. That's good. And where else did you do it?
Dishonesty.
Okay, and the dishonesty had to do with you're not being honest about your recovery program.
Right.
So what are you going to do about that?
And also I'm not honest with him about how I feel about taking care of
Okay.
him.
Now wait a minute. These are two separate things. Let's go back to the first one. Okay. That's what I need to write down. I will tell the truth.
Okay.
Okay. Now the second one, I was waiting for that to come up because it usually does. And some of these things I hear, well, I'm not being honest about my feelings. This is not Dr. Phil. There is nothing anywhere that requires you to be honest about your feelings to everybody. As a matter of fact, in many cases, it is detrimental to tell somebody exactly how you feel. Plus, it's probably going to change, especially if you come here and start working a program. Now, do I need to vent those feelings? Absolutely. but not with the person that I'm involved with. Does all of that make sense to people?
Yeah.
Also, please don't bring it to my Thursday afternoon meeting, okay? This is stuff we take to a sponsor, to a close friend. Does all of that make sense to?
Yeah.
You know, and if you don't have a close friend, please get a sponsor. Get a sponsor anyway. So yes, that needs to be ventilated, not to him. There is nothing good that can come out of your telling this person that you resent the fact that you actually have to provide some care for them. And this is an instance where you do need to provide some care. Okay, does that make sense?
Yes,
You don't get to tell them
definitely.
that. You don't get to tell them that. Tell your sponsor. Yeah, okay. Where else was there? What else we had? Pride?
Laziness.
Okay, and the laziness had to do with what?
I've been backing off from taking care of like his responsibilities and trying to get other people to do it.
Okay, so what are you going to do about that? Okay, in this particular case, those are probably some responsibilities you need to take on. I know a little bit about her situation. You know, this is a situation, can I share just a little?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, this is an invalid son that actually needs some caretaking. Okay, because I know this sounds the opposite of most of what we talk about here, but this is why we need to do an inventory, is to sort this stuff out. This is somebody that actually needs some caretaking, and you're probably the one that's supposed to do it. Okay, so you need to get more involved with what you're doing. Is all of this making sense to people? Kind of see what we're doing? Let's go back to yours, okay? What are we going to do about the anger? That's right. That's okay. You don't have to do it today. For that matter, you can talk about this afternoon, but that is the event. Okay, where else was there a check mark? Okay, what are you going to do about that? That would be a start. What else?
Letting him go.
Okay, how are you going to do that?
I left.
Pardon?
I already did it. I left.
But you're still obsessing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Isn't it amazing how that works? We can leave, but we still obsess. You're still there, aren't you? Okay, so but let's talk about the obsession. What are you going to do about that? Why don't you ask God to remove it? Write that down. Ask God to remove the obsession. I know you may be enjoying it a little bit, but you'll probably like it better once it's gone. It'll be strange for a while. You'll miss it. It'll be better. Okay, where else was there a check mark?
Fear.
And the fear was about what?
Fear was about him leaving, so.
Okay, well, that's already happened.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's work on the end of the session and see what happens. Where else was there a check mark?
Anything.
Okay, what are you going to do about that?
I think that was part of the obsession.
I think so too, and I think as we begin to work on the obsession. Okay, the other thing that's going to happen, we'll talk more about this afternoon. When we deal with the anger, this is why it's at the top of the list. This is the cork in the bottle. And when we deal with the anger, a whole lot of the rest of this stuff really begins to fall into place. Like somebody stated, I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing because I'm pissed at them, right? If I get rid of the anger, then I become far more willing to do what I'm supposed to do. Does all of this make sense to people? Okay, and you'll see how this falls together in step 9 this afternoon when we talk more about that. Okay, so does everybody have the idea of what we're doing here and how we're going about it? Does all of this kind of make sense? Okay, what we're doing is we're taking a moral inventory, and I need to talk for just a second about that. Our literature says we take a moral inventory. What that means is I need to make some decisions about what's right and what's wrong and what's good and what's bad. A life history doesn't get that. And a lot of times people sit down and write a life history. So what? That's my life. It's a biography. But I need to decide what's right, wrong, good, bad, and I need to do it based on my values today, not what my values were 20 years ago, or what school taught me or church taught me, but on what I believe today. And this could change again, and that's fine. But based on my values today, is this good, bad, right, wrong? Why do I need to decide that? Because you see, in steps 6 and 7, we're going to deal with defects of character. If I have not made some decisions as to what's right, wrong, good, bad, okay, in my life, I don't know what my defects of character are. Does that make sense? In steps 8 and 9, we're going to deal with making amends, making restitution. If I don't know what I've done wrong, then I don't know what I need to do to make restitution. Does all of this make sense to people? But essentially, the 4th step is a list. It's nothing more than a damn list. And I don't need to get emotionally involved in the list, but I do need to make the list so that I have the material that I need to do steps 6, 7, 8, and 9. The primary purpose of steps 4 and 5, I believe, is simply to get the material that I need to do steps 6, 7, 8, and 9. Does that make sense to everybody? You know, there may be other stuff in there that should be dealt with a therapist or somewhere else, and all of that is fine. Okay, but that isn't what we do here. We do the spiritual solution and the spiritual solution only. And we're going to talk more about that this afternoon. That other stuff, if I need to take care of it, I go where I need to take care of it. All of that makes sense to everyone? Okay? I mean, would you go to a therapist and charge you $1 an hour? Okay. I mean, just a thought. All right. Moving on. Okay, we're going to go down. We've already done that. Okay. Here we go.
When you've described the various incidents associated with the dots, your sharing partner will help you determine if an amends needs to be made. Once you've decided upon a course of action to make your amends, your sharing partner will change the dot to a check mark. Not all dots will become check marks. Remember, recovery comes from sharing our shortcomings with God, ourselves, and another human being.
Okay, the healing is in the sharing, not in the writing. This is something we've really gotten backwards over the last 20 years or so. The healing is in the sharing, not in the writing. The only reason I do the writing is so that I know what I need to share. You know, I can get some clarity. But the real healing is in the sharing. You know, we're doing a lot of what I like to call graphotherapy, where you go out on your own and write. And there are reasons to write, and there are certain types of meditations that are really cool, and journaling and keeping a diary is a great idea. But it doesn't work particularly well for recovery. Because remember, going back to the 2nd step, I'm dealing with this thing that is already deluded. Mm-hmm. And if I go home and I write down the delusion, all I've done is made the delusion worse. Make sense? And can you see why some of the stuff you've been doing hasn't been working? Okay? So the healing is in the sharing, not in the writing. Okay? The only wrong way to do the steps is alone. We need to do this with somebody. Okay.
Many of us find that our higher power can speak to us through others, and this is a prime opportunity for such communication. Once you've discussed the defects and agreed upon the amends, you will have determined what has kept you from finding the spiritual solution to your problems.
And again, we deal with the spiritual solution here. For some of these things, there may be a therapeutic solution. If that's the case, find a therapist or a counselor and do that. In other cases, there will be a legal solution. Good, get yourself a good attorney. But we're going to deal with the spiritual solution here.
We end the session by describing the assets that we already have, those items with the least number of check marks, and those assets that will be strengthened, those with the most check marks, by making your amends.
So any place where you do not have a check mark is an asset that you already have, at least in that particular relationship. And as you make the amends, okay, and take care of the things that were the check marks, they will become assets. Because nature abhors a vacuum. You know, it can't be a vacuum. If it's not a defect, then it has to be an asset. Is this making some sense to everybody? Do you see what we're talking about? Okay. So.
The defects with check marks to the right of them are the shortcomings you will turn over to the God of your understanding in steps 6 and 7. The names above the check marks become your 8th step amends list. The check marks and the notes taken identify the specific amends you are to make in step 9. Therefore, you have everything you need to take.
Sheet of paper, through 9 on one sheet of paper. It's that simple. Okay. All right. I love this visual. This is given Arizona that from a workshop in Mexico. I've just been born completely living on vacation. And it puts us a little bit. And I said no. All of this, I feel guilty, and I very much. She says, that's okay, so by the time here, I'm walking back to the first step. I am desperately dependent on this higher power to remove the obsession, which is the crux of the problem in step one. Okay? And there's no communication because I got all of this stuff blocking it. But I don't have to clear all of this stuff in order for this to begin working. I mean, eventually I want to clear the whole channel. But for now, if I can get rid of maybe just a couple of the things, okay, then God can communicate with me and I have a chance. You know, but I need to make a beginning. You know, there'll be time later to finish clearing the entire channel. Okay, I'm visual, so this makes sense to me. I hope it makes sense to some of the rest of you. This is what we're trying to do, is to clear this channel so the higher power can actually work in our lives. Which brings us to step 5, which says,
admitted to God, to ourselves, and another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. Step 4 helped us to learn about ourselves, our strengths, and our shortcomings. In taking step 5, we acknowledge what our inventory has helped us to discover, revealing these insights not only to ourselves and our higher power, but to another person as well. We try to identify the exact nature of our wrongs, the motives or patterns behind these shortcomings, recognizing that many of our past errors were merely symptoms of an underlying problem or weakness of character. For example, our inventory might have unearthed occasions when we stole cookies from our local market.
or maybe makeup from Walgreens.
Upon closer examination,
Did somebody identify with this? I think. Okay.
upon closer examination, we may realize that the underlying problem was a fear that we wouldn't have enough to eat. The thought of admitting our darkest secrets to someone else can be frightening at first, but if we can summon the courage to challenge these fears and can go ahead and take step 5 in spite of them, we take a huge stride towards personal freedom. Step 5 does not ask us to show our faults to the whole world, but to our own hearts, to the God of our understanding, and to a trusted friend. We are not looking for someone to tell us how to handle our problems, but rather for a loving witness who can provide perspective on our spiritual journey, one who can appreciate what we're doing and how we are growing. Find a partner.
Okay. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a break. We got food to eat, but you have an assignment during the break, and then we're going to pair you off with somebody. You already have one column. You just did it. And your job during the break is to share that column with whoever we pair you off with, and then listen to them share their column with you. You should have enough time for each of you to do a second column. So when we come back from the break, everyone will have 2 columns that you put on the inventory and shared with somebody. We're then going to take those 2 people and take them through steps 6, 7, 8, and 9, so you can see precisely how this whole thing works. Okay, anybody have any questions on that? Okay, so let's have all the men stand. We'll do that first, since there's fewer of them. Okay. Yeah, I know you're here more. And all of you have already done the 4th and 5th step at one time or another. So, John, you want somebody? Okay. Stand up. Sit Okay, you want you work together? Have you done? Okay. That's certainly okay. Did you work with this? You two were? Yeah. Okay. So, right now, okay, there's food.